Daniel, what are you doing? We're not doing copies and questions on the roof. Get back down here and get inside.
Hey guys, we are very excited today for episode 7 of Coffee and Questions. Cheers!
Cheers!
We've got Daniel Guthrie here today with
C2C home inspections.
Last week we went over the standard contract, and the next step once you're under contract is to get a home inspection done. So we are excited to go over what all that entails.
All right,
let's get started.
Daniel Guthrie, C2C home inspections. Been doing this for 10 to 12 years. There's a team of 3 of us. It's myself, my partner Gene Tillis, and his wife Deanna Tillis. We're all licensed home inspectors, and we can handle any house. If it's a smaller single-family home, then it'll be one of us, either myself or Gene and his wife Deanna, both come on as a team, which is very nice. They get their reports out to you usually that day because of that. With myself, I usually wake up in the morning, the next morning, and finish up my report, proofread everything, and send it out the next morning before 10 a.m., which is where my first inspection starts. And then if you are purchasing a larger home, usually 4,000 or 5,000 square foot, 15,000 square foot, and all 3 of us will show up, and we can knock that inspection out in a much quicker time frame too as well.
Still trying to stick with that 3 hours, but it's 3 of you, so it's 9 hours. Big homes need more
Yeah,
time.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So can you tell me why buyers should get an inspection?
The reason why a buyer does an inspection is for 2 reasons. In order to determine whether or not they want the home, make an educated decision whether or not they want the home with all the issues that we find with the home, or any of the issues that we find with the home. And if we do find some major issues that are deal killers to the buyers, they have a possibility of possibly negotiating it as well and still getting the home, even though it may have been a deal killer to the potential buyer.
I know with the times that Christy and I represent buyers and sellers for that matter, the inspection period is probably the most intense and difficult part of the home buying and selling process, because there's a whole bunch of unknowns. I mean, the seller is living in the house and everything's functioning, but you don't get into the detail that an inspector gets into to kind of point out everything wrong. And, the buyer is just excited to have found a home.
Right. And that's one of the main things. A lot of people, when they purchase a car, will have a mechanic go over the entire car, especially a used car, and tell them everything that's wrong with it. That's basically what we are. We're mechanics going through an entire house telling you everything that's wrong with it, so you can make that educated decision whether or not you want that house with all the issues that come with it. We can give an idea of how much maintenance has been done, any repairs have been done. Sometimes we can tell as well. So it kind of gives you an idea of what the house has gone through.
Kind of like what to expect when you move in.
Absolutely.
And some things could be small. I mean, I consider it small, but other people may not. But like an outlet not working, and it's an easy fix, but the seller may not know the outlet's not working because they never use it. And it's things like that you're finding, along with roof leaks, AC issues, plumbing. I mean, the list just goes on and on.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times we are the first and last person that climbs through an entire attic at that time of the inspection. So a lot of potential sellers that sell their house that have a rigorous maintenance program, that think their house is absolutely perfect, may or may not see what's going on, so they didn't have the opportunity to fix it because they didn't know about it. So that happens a lot. You'd be surprised how many leaks happen underneath sinks where the sink's just never been used. There's no, the sellers don't think there's a leak there. They just don't use it. And so when we test it, we fill the entire sink up, we drain water through it. We rigorously test everything in the home. A lot of times you'll have a little bit of a drip there. A lot of times it's easy. Just tightening up something will fix that kind of thing. So a lot of these things.
Something that'll show up on the report, so it makes the report incredibly long. But it's an easy fix, such as just tightening or replacing.
Correct.
Which is easy.
Yeah, a lot of people get caught up in the plumbing and electrical issues, but usually they're very inexpensive fixes, usually.
Well, how long, if a buyer wants to participate, or like how long does an inspection last? Whenever you go into a home, you've got it scheduled, what are we looking at for time?
For us, from start to finish, it obviously depends on the age of the house and the size of the house. Normally it's 2 hours. We give ourselves a 3-hour window.
Okay.
and we can usually knock it out within 3 hours.
Okay.
So.
And are buyers allowed to be there?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I would say we have 3 different types of buyers in terms of attendance.
Mm-hmm.
You have, our first buyer, we can go through inspection relatively quickly, honestly, by ourselves. When the buyer's out of town, they don't have questions. And what we do as a company, which not a lot of inspection companies do, is we'll call that buyer. After we're done, we send them the report, and we'll sit down on the phone with them and spend 15, 20 minutes with them and go over line for line what we found wrong with the house. And what we found right with the house, too, as well. We don't always point out just bad issues. We're trying to tell you what we liked about the house, too. Mm-hmm. And so we'll just go line for line through the report so you feel a little bit more comfortable with it. When you get a home inspection report itself, with the amount of things that we find as home inspectors, as good home inspectors that point out, there's usually a pretty good list of them. Mm-hmm. So it does help to understand. It helps to differentiate between a true issue or just a maintenance issue that is something as a home inspector you have to put on reports. Mm-hmm. That may not ever become an issue, but it's still something that you should do to maintain the house. In a way.
Keep a lookout.
Yeah, exactly. Future possibility of an issue. Mm-hmm. If you fix it now, then you won't have that issue. But the possibility sometimes are very slim chance. It's still just rules that we follow as home inspectors. The second type of person is a person that is very busy but would like to show up to the house. Mm-hmm. Now, the biggest mistakes people make is they show up. We say we're going to be there at 2 o'clock. They're there at 2 o'clock waiting for us. And they've got to be gone. Well, we don't have any answers for them at 2 o'clock. We have answers for them as we're finishing up the inspection. So we like people to show up at the very last half an hour of the inspection. We can go over any of their concerns right there on site. We can point out all the issues that we found. We usually give a tour of the house. So we'll do the outside, and then we'll walk through the inside with them, pointing out everything that we remember that we found to be deficient, and anything that we liked about the house, too, we're pointing out while we're doing it as well. We're pointing out where the main water shutoff is. AC units, kind of safe drain line, how to maintain these things. So it can be educational as well. And that brings me to the third person. Mm-hmm. Third person is a hands-on handyman type or new buyer that hasn't ever owned a house before. These are things that we recommend for them. And a lot of home inspectors don't like having somebody shadow them, is what we call it, because it will cost you more time. But once again, we give 3 hours for our inspection for those types of people. And they can shadow us. Walk around the entire house with us. We can point out all these things while we're doing it, what we're looking for, how to maintain this stuff. It usually adds an hour to the inspection. Okay. But we don't mind. We don't charge any extra for it. I think it can be a very educational process for a potential buyer to a house. So.
And really understand when a buyer gets a report and the realtors get the report, it's it feels like 60 pages. Is that right? Am I wrong?
To agents, it feels like that, yes. I've designed the report that I put out myself because my old company had at least 35 to 50 pages, and it's kind of overwhelming and it's confusing. So the report that I came up with is with one of the major reporting systems out there, but I changed it a lot. And they give you that opportunity to do that. And I basically broke it down into a work order, if you will. So all the electrical issues are numbered 1 through 5, hopefully. 15 sometimes, but 1 through 5 normally, and then plumbing, same thing, 1 through 5. And basically you can take the plumbing, you can cut and paste, give it to a plumber, and he can knock out all of these things on my report, and then all your plumbing should be back to perfect again. And that's kind of the system that we use with our reporting system. It should be about 15 to 20 pages mine now that I've changed.
So with that being said, even 20 pages or 15, and you see all sorts of stuff on there. So if my clients have the opportunity to walk around with your inspector, and it's nice to truly understand, just because it's on the report doesn't mean that the sky's falling. Like it's not everything on the report is a major deal. Everything on the report is being reported, so they know what's wrong with the house.
Yeah.
So an outlet can be fixed easily, and like we had said earlier, things like that. But when you first receive the report, especially if they didn't have that opportunity to talk with you, whether it's over the phone or in person, it feels overwhelming. But
yeah, one of the things too is easy to read. I tried to make this report easy to read. I've read so many other inspectors' reports. As a home inspector, it was difficult to read.
Yeah.
So I've tried to make this very simplified. I still have recommendations in there, on how to maintain the home properly with your walls, caulking, ceiling, and things like that everybody should know about in there. But for the main part, for those 15 pages, a lot of it is pictures. I put a lot of pictures in there because we all like pictures better than we like reading. So I put a lot of pictures in my reports. They're all color photos, all high res when you get our reports. So you can zoom in, look closely at these pictures. And obviously, as home inspectors, we take pride in our pictures and we try to take the best pictures we possibly can. It's another big part of home inspector.
Whenever you get an order for an inspection, how often does the contract that the buyer has with the seller play a part that you've seen when it comes to repairs and things like that? Like a as-is contract versus a standard contract. And obviously in an as-is and a standard contract, we went over it a little bit last week, the biggest difference is in a standard, the seller has to repair up to a certain price. And as a as-is, you're agreeing as a buyer to purchase the house as is, regardless of the condition of the home that the inspector finds. But that doesn't mean you can't go in and renegotiate during the inspection period. The difference is that the seller can say, no, I'm not fixing these, or yes, I want to keep this contract going. And so we will renegotiate, versus the standard where that seller doesn't have that opportunity to back away from that option. They have to a certain price, it's written in the contract, repair certain things up to this expense, up to this cost. So how often have you seen those play a part when it comes to contracts, or do you ever come across the contract aspect since you're the inspector?
Yeah, absolutely. And I change my reports a little bit when I do a repair-only contract. Actually, you're absolutely right. There's a big difference between the two of them. In my opinion, the repair-only contract is a black and white. As a home inspector, it's black and white. If it's not functioning as intended, as it's supposed to, it has to be fixed. There are no gray areas. It's in the report what needs to be fixed. If it's not functioning as intended, it has to be fixed. And if it's just not working that well, it doesn't have to be fixed. With an as-is, the buyer has a lot of strength. They can negotiate anything, and it can possibly drive both the home inspector and the real estate agent. You know, it can make it a little bit more difficult because, you know, it's a personal thing. It becomes personal. It doesn't become business. You know, so the repair only is good for some things, and the as-is is good for some things too. One of the big differences is the roof tiles. Cracked roof tiles they are still functioning as intended as long as there's not a leak. With an as-is, a lot of people try to negotiate cracked roof tiles, but they're not going to cause a leak right away. Is it a normal maintenance item that you should do to maintain your house when you have a tile roof? Absolutely. But with a repair-only contract, they don't have to be fixed. Now, if there's a leak somewhere, it has to be fixed. That means that roof is not functioning as intended, and it has to be fixed. And there's some interesting minor things, too, that show up on a repair-only that have to be fixed. For instance, window screens. You have a tear in a window screen, it has to be fixed because that window screen is supposed to keep bugs out, and it's not functioning as intended.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and as is, I've never heard anybody.
We never dropped our window screens.
Exactly.
But it's like, oh, they have them on most windows. That's exciting. We can open up these ones during the cooler weather. If you guys have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out and ask, put in the comments, and we can get them answered for you. So thank you for joining us for Coffee and Questions, and cheers to you.
Oh yeah, cheers. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks. And we'll put his information in as well if you ever need an inspector. Give him a call.